State Representative Maria Rodriguez Ramos from Dallas, thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
So here we are ready for the session, and the very first vote is going to be for Speaker, and you are the Democrat running for Speaker in this race. Why are you running? Because Republicans are going to be watching this and they're going to say, she doesn't have a chance to win. So why is this so important for you to be in the race?
It's very important for me to run in this race as the only Democrat, because since I've been there I'm going into my fourth session. On swearing-in day, I noticed we sit around, we wait, there's a couple of nominations for Speaker, and there has not been a Democrat. In fact, in 20 years, we haven't had a Democratic nominee for Speaker of the race and Speaker of the House. And I didn't understand my first couple of sessions, why is that the case? And it dawned on me that we have become the party of submission and not opposition. And so a good friend of mine, my colleague, Representative John Bryant, said, if we don't fight every battle, we'll never win the war. So the first battle that we need to fight is on swearing-in day, and to let the people of Texas know we are an opposition party. And so setting on the first day of swearing in, setting our heels down, our feet down on the ground, saying we are, in fact, a party of opposition. We have better ideas. We have a stronger platform for Texas working families. That is why I decided to run. And in addition to that, the truth is that we are in a precarious situation when it comes to public education in Texas, and we know that during the November elections, we lost a lot of very strong individuals who supported public schools. And so this is also part of that. Running for Speaker of the House was also to show the people of Texas that you do have a candidate in a Democratic Speaker of the House that does support our public schools.
You sent out a letter to your Democratic colleagues in the House asking for their support. Some of them have publicly said they're going to be supporting Representative Dustin Burrows, one of the Republicans in the race. So have you had conversations with them, and what's that all about? What's your reaction?
Well, fortunately, we're still in a democracy, so they can, by all means, support the Republican who supports vouchers, who supports dismantling our public schools. They have every right to vote for their Republican. I just want the people of Texas to see what kind of individuals they are sending to the Texas legislature, and if we see things have not changed, which we know things are not changing, in fact, we're kind of regressing in Texas, that is part of the reason, and we need to take a bigger look at that and hold our Democratic elected officials accountable.
So on Monday, the Texas Comptroller is going to make a formal announcement as to the surplus, and he has already estimated, Governor Abbott has said, it's about $20 billion. So how do you think lawmakers should deal with that? Should they give more property tax relief? Should they give other relief to Texans? Where are you on that?
Well, we need to get the money back to the working families of Texas. We don't have Medicaid expansion. In my district alone, we're closed 5 public schools. We know that they've held some of the surplus money hostage to get Abbott's obsession with vouchers passed in Texas. So that surplus money needs to go back to working families in Texas. We need to make sure that Texan families are not struggling to see which schools, if their neighborhood school is going to close. My neighborhood school closed. And that should not be happening. People have lost jobs. That should not be happening in a state where we have such a robust surplus. Rural hospitals are closing. We should ask ourselves, if we have such a huge surplus, why is it that in fact these working families are struggling so much? Why are wages not increasing in Texas? Why are families at the kitchen table still not able to afford food? I am a family law attorney, and I have clients who are saying, they've cut my food stamps. I don't have SNAP benefits. Those are real issues that with the surplus in Texas, children are dying in foster care. They're sleeping in hotel rooms. Yet we have this surplus. I think it's immoral and it's a shame that we are bragging about this surplus when our children are dying and not being fed and our schools are closing. I think it's very shameful, and we need to really take a look at that.
So when you talk about giving it back to the working families, when I ask you relief, so what exactly does that mean? So are you talking about increasing money for public schools as a form of relief for working families? Or are you talking about a sales tax reduction? I mean, what specifically do you have in mind when you talk about helping working families?
Well, we worked with, for example, Representative Bryant had a really robust plan last cycle for property tax relief. Not only would it go into actual property owners, people who live in Texas, your homestead exemption, right? So working families who live and own property in Texas, but also renters, so rent relief. So not only would big corporations, the way the bill eventually landed is the big corporations, people who don't even live in Texas, who own Texas property, benefited from some of that property tax relief. What we wanted to see is the renters also benefit from that relief. And so the surplus money would have gone not only to working families that also rent, that unfortunately have not been able to purchase property, but also to increasing the basic allotment in our public schools, to making sure that our special needs children receive the services that they need. You know, I live in a very strong school district that really supports special needs children. But we know that in Texas we don't have the resources and the services that our special needs children deserve in their public schools. There are many ways that we can go back in helping these working families to make sure that there's more money on the table for them, that they don't have to worry about, can I buy groceries or take my child to the doctor? Those are basic issues that are very, very important. I have a daughter who needs medical care right now, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge for someone who is a lawyer, right? For our family to pay for some of these medical bills. I can't imagine 20 years ago what it looked like, and what it looks like for many people today when they can't afford to send their kids to the hospital, to the doctor. There are things that they have to take care of at home. It's wrong. That shouldn't be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And so with this surplus, there are many ways we can directly benefit our working families that we're continuing to ignore, and we have been doing so for over 2 decades now.
You spoke about public school funding, and yes, there have been schools in various districts around North Texas that have closed. There's declining enrollment, but there's also funding issues, inflation, et cetera. And so I'm wondering how much more money per, the basic allotment per student hasn't changed since 2019. Do you think the school district should receive? And should there be additional money set aside specifically for teacher pay raises?
Yes, there should be money set aside specifically for teacher pay raises. And what we're talking about in terms of the basic allotment, the increase, what they've offered for this voucher program, even if we start there, what they've offered is $10,000 per child in this voucher program.
That was last session.
Voucher scheme, right.
Yeah.
In last session,
We'll see what the lawmakers come up with this time around.
Even if we were to meet there, which doesn't meet inflation, but even if we started there, it would be more than what they're receiving today, which is $6,100 approximately per student. So just starting at that level, where for some miraculous way they were able to come up with that $10,000 figure for the voucher scheme, but they're not able to fund our schools now with those additional funds. So there's constantly been a discrepancy, a disparity in terms of what money we can find to send money to private entities, but when it comes to the money that we have to actually invest in our own public schools, for whatever reason, we're not able to find those monies or to prioritize those monies. And it's very important to me, especially when we talk about working families and the connection, right? We know that public education is a great equalizer. I'm a high school dropout. I never made it to high school. I went up to the 8th grade. But I had a quality education when I was in elementary school. I had a quality education where they taught me how to read and write, where they taught me how to think critically. They invested in public schools when I was a kid. I was an investment. Nowhere in the world you would think a high school dropout, a teenage mother, would now be running for Speaker of the Texas House, one of the largest states in the union, right? But because of my quality education, because of the investments that we made in our public schools, I was able to rise from poverty to a middle-class family. And that's what we can do, and that's what we can do when we truly prioritize education. It is about working families. It is about feeding the minds of those children, and not only the minds, right? But a lot of those children don't have food at home. So these educators are even feeding those kids at school. That's where that money should go, so that we can build a robust and a bright future of these children that, but for me not having that quality education that led me up to 8th grade when I dropped out, I would not have been able to go to law school, be a lawyer today, and be a Texas House of Representative and who's running for Speaker of the House. It goes back to investing in our communities and our people, and that's what I'm saying. With this surplus, we got to bring it back to the people, not these corporate write-offs and tax credits to the top 66 billionaires in Texas who earn more than 70% of the Texas population combined. Think about that. 66 Texas billionaires make more than 70% of our people combined. There is something wrong with that. And we do know when we have these surpluses, when we have all this money, where does this go? We're building more prisons, we're doing these other things, but we're not helping you, the Texas working family, and we got to get back to that.
So you talked a lot, and but I wanted to break down one other question with regards to the taxpayer-funded education savings accounts. Basically what we've been discussing, which is using tax dollars to enable some students to attend private school. The governor says he's got the votes this time around in the House. What do you say to that?
I think he's, I think he's bluffing. I don't believe that that's true. In fact,
Well, there were a number of Republicans who were ousted in the primaries.
And they brought in new individuals. But they brought in these new individuals who were elected. What the governor did with all his billion-dollar donations that he received, or multi-million-dollar donations, they misled the constituents in those communities about those individuals who were running in those districts. So you had these Republicans who ran for re-election and lost. They were anti-voucher Republicans. What the governor did is misled when they sent all the information out. They sent out a lot of mailers to their communities to say, don't vote for this individual because he's pro-border. He voted for Nancy Pelosi. They lied. They essentially lied to these people. But tell you one thing they did not talk about is vouchers. They did not say that that person was against vouchers. And the reason they didn't, because it's a losing issue, and the governor knew it. So instead of telling the truth that these people voted against Abbott's voucher scheme, he told the people they were pro-immigrant, which completely was not true because every single Republican voted in lockstep with anti-immigrant policy. So my point in saying all of that is that they know it's a losing issue when you're talking these rural communities who are already losing their hospitals, who are already feeling the effects of inflation. Now to say we're going to close the largest employer in your school, in your community, no more Friday night lights, no more community gatherings, your schools are closing, and now you're going to have to drive, you have to drive 20 miles to send grandmother to the hospital, you're going to have to drive 20 miles to send your kid to the nearest public school. That's what's going to happen in these rural communities. So now that these new individuals are in, that have won, they're going to be better educated now. And I'm not saying that they are all going to be pro-voucher or anti-voucher, but they're going to have to go back and respond to these communities who were lied to when their communities are closing, and they're going to have to figure that out. And I can tell you that once people start putting the pieces together, the money's been spent, the lies are out there, but the truth starts hitting people in their homes and they start seeing closed, it's going to start, there'll be some more reactions. And so I don't believe it's as easy as he says it's going to be.
I want to ask you about border security. Second Trump administration is about to begin. The president-elect has said, he campaigned on it, he's going to crack down on illegal immigration. And Governor Abbott said after the election that perhaps once things ramp up on the federal level, the state will be able to spend less on border security. How do you react to that, and what would you like to see done?
Well, I went to the border not too long ago, maybe 6 months ago. We were invited from the individuals, the Lone Star Project, to not only fly over the border, but get on the rafts, get on the helicopter, get on the airplane. So we did all of the different levels. And I got to tell you, there was nobody there. There was nobody at the border, but they were steady building those tents. So we have to follow the money, right? The money that he's been spending, yes, now he's saying we need to spend less money, or not spend less money, but that we will, fortunately get support or whatever from the federal government. We know there is a decline in immigration. That has been happening. And so this money, this pet project that the governor has had, has really been about, again, following the dollars to this prison privatization, which is, we are the prison private capital of the country. Texas is the prison privatization capital of the country. We're investing more in private prisons, which means it goes to corporations, which means it goes to their stakeholders and their investors, not our people, right? There's so many pieces to this, but the truth is it is an issue that could have been resolved or that could have been addressed and actually has been addressed because there's been a decline in immigration. We do need to do something about this. We do need to make sure that we have the judges on board, and that's one of the things that they told us in the Lone Star Project. We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough lawyers to really process these individuals. Like, that's where the money needs to be spent. And I think if we are going to really prioritize addressing this issue, then we need to do it in a humane way, but we need to do it the way that we say we're doing it, which is actually processing these people and not passing the buck or, telling somebody else that, if we're going to be spending this money, let's work. And in reality, that is a good thing that Abbott refused to work with the federal government during the Biden administration. We could have gotten a lot more things done. He refused to. It was just ridiculous. But now, working with the Trump administration, maybe they'll actually be able to be effective in actually processing these individuals with some, hopefully, we can only hope, with some humanity.
Well, that would be federal dollars.
Right.
Federal money, federal program, not state.
No, not state, but we were spending state money and not working on the security and not working closely with the federal government to make sure that we were completing making sure that we were completing the full process of immigration versus we're going to capture them, we're going to release them, we're going to detain them for illegal trespassing. It has nothing to do with immigration, and creating this system that didn't need to happen if we were really going to address the immigration issue and not minor issues like trespassing, which, they created a criminal offense for trespassing when they could have been processed in the actual immigration process. Do you understand? So they fragmented the actual processing versus making sure that we streamlined it and made it effective.
Is there any other issue that is really on top of your radar heading into session?
Well, definitely workers' rights and local control. We know that Dustin Burrows, who is running for Speaker of the House, passed a very harmful, what they call the Death Star bill, taking away rights from our local communities, our local democracies. So we get to elect our city council members, we get to elect our mayor, and within those local elections, we get to decide what our values are and the issues important to us in our communities. Well, effectively, what Dustin Burrows did with that bill is saying, no, you, Dallas, cannot decide. You, McAllen, cannot decide. You, McKinney, cannot decide. These specific issues need to be decided at the state level, and it takes away our power and control. And so I think that one of the main areas that we need to really focus on is going back and really scaling back what the damage that has been done, because it doesn't give us the teeth and the power to protect our local communities. But on top of that, women's rights have been a huge issue. We know that in Texas, we had 26,000 rape-related pregnancies last year because of these harmful anti-women legislation that these Republicans passed. And so there are many areas that we really need to address, not to mention we did nothing about the Uvalde massacre, about handguns in Texas. I mean, we've increased road rage in Texas. Now, my son alone has had a gun pulled on him twice on the freeway driving home from work, and he works he works in Dallas, not too far from home. But people have found that it's okay in Texas. It's almost the wild, wild west. You don't need a permit, you don't need a license, you don't need training, and people are resorting to very aggressive behaviors. That it's aggressive, but it's regressive. We're regressing. We're going back in Texas in terms of really protecting working families and protecting individuals, and we need to move forward.
And so you're going to try to pass legislation?
Yes, and so I am the chair of the Progressive Caucus, and so we're working with our Progressive Caucus members collectively to pass a package of different legislation to increase workers' rights. That's part of one of the Death Star bill, right? Local municipalities cannot pass ordinances to give 10-minute breaks for construction workers. That's how bad it is. So what we're working on is bills that are going to help working families, to help workers, to help women, but really to elevate and lift up the working family.
State Representative Maria Rodriguez Ramos of Dallas, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.